Welcome to Unspoken Affairs. In today's video, I want to take you on a journey back into a memory that, even after all these years, still feels as vivid as if it happened only yesterday. It wasn't a grand event or a life-changing moment in the usual sense. It was something small, something ordinary, but somehow it became one of those nights that etched itself into my heart forever. And maybe, just maybe, you'll find that it reminds you of moments from your own life, moments you might have overlooked at the time, but that carried more meaning than you ever realized. When I look back at that particular evening, I see now how the simplest moments sometimes become the ones we hold on to most tightly. My name is Emily, and I grew up in what most people would probably call a fairly typical suburban neighborhood in Ohio. It wasn't the kind of place you'd see in movies with sweeping hills or endless beaches. It was a neighborhood with neatly lined streets, kids riding bikes in the summer, and parents waving at each other as they mowed their lawns on Saturday mornings. Nothing extraordinary, but it was home. Our house wasn't large, not by any means. It had 2 floors, a small backyard with an old oak tree, and the kind of kitchen where everyone always seemed to end up, no matter what was going on in the rest of the house. What it lacked in size, it made up for in life. It was filled with noise, laughter, the clatter of dishes, and the constant comings and goings of my family. It was a house where someone was always talking, where footsteps echoed on the stairs, and where silence almost never lasted more than a few minutes. In that lively household, there was me and my younger brother, Jacob. He was 3 years younger, and for most of our childhood, he had been the kind of kid who followed me around like a little shadow. Wherever I went, he wanted to go. Whatever game I invented, he wanted to join in. And to be honest, when I was younger, sometimes that annoyed me. I wanted space, independence, freedom, to be my own person. But Jacob's presence was constant, and whether I admitted it or not, it was comforting to know he was always nearby. As we grew older, though, things naturally started to change. I got busier with schoolwork, friends, and activities that took me out of the house more often. Jacob began to build his own world too. Friends from his soccer team, video games, he played with his buddies, and interests that no longer required tagging along with me. Slowly, almost without us noticing, the closeness we had when we were kids began to slip away. We still lived in the same house, still shared meals and passed each other in the hallways, but it wasn't the same. He was growing into his own person, and I was figuring out mine. But then came that one evening. It didn't look special on the surface. Our parents had been invited to a neighborhood dinner, something they did occasionally when one of the neighbors decided to host. Since Jacob and I were both considered old enough to be left alone, they decided we didn't need a babysitter. Mom left behind a casserole in the fridge, complete with a note taped to the top about heating instructions. Dad gave his usual reminders to lock the doors and not to open them for strangers. And then, just like that, they were gone. The house grew quiet in a way it rarely did. At first, I thought I'd use the opportunity to enjoy some uninterrupted time in my room. I had just gotten into a new novel, the kind that made you want to turn page after page until the whole world around you faded away. I imagined myself curled up under my blanket, letting the story sweep me away. But on my way upstairs, I passed the living room and saw Jacob sitting on the couch. He looked bored, really bored, the kind of restless boredom where you toss a baseball up and down in your hand as if the walls are pressing in on you. Something about his expression made me pause. Maybe it was the way his eyes followed the ball without any real enthusiasm, or the way his shoulders slumped like he didn't quite know what to do with himself. In that moment, I recognized something I had felt myself plenty of times. Sting of being left out, of feeling like everyone else had something better to do. For once, instead of brushing past him, I stopped. "Hey, Jacob," I said. Leaning against the doorframe, he looked up at me like I'd just spoken in another language. "What? Want to do something?" I asked, trying to sound casual. His eyebrows lifted in surprise. "Like what?" I shrugged, pretending I hadn't just made a spontaneous decision to give up my book for him. I don't know. Something fun. We could make up our own game. Or cook something. And then it hit me. What if we build a fort? I swear his entire face lit up in an instant. It was like flipping a switch from boredom to excitement. The kind of excitement kids usually have, pure and unfiltered. Like the blanket forts we used to make. He asked, sitting up straighter. Exactly, I said, already picturing it. Only this time we're older, so we can make it even better. A real fortress. Within minutes, we were on a mission. We dragged blankets and cushions from every corner of the house. Chairs from the dining room became support beams. Sheets stretched across them like rooftops. Pillows stacked into walls. And from a box in the basement, we unearthed a string of Christmas lights that added a magical glow once we draped them inside. The living room slowly transformed into something entirely different, a glowing hideout that felt like our own little world. Jacob and I laughed harder than we had in months as we argued over which blanket made the best roof or who should be in charge of the engineering department. By the time we were done, it didn't look like just a fort. It looked like a tiny city, glowing softly in the middle of our living room. We crawled inside, bringing bowls of popcorn, flashlights, and a deck of cards. And for the first time in a long while, Jacob didn't feel like just my younger brother. He felt like a friend. We played cards by flashlight, our laughter bouncing off the blanket walls. Between shuffles, we told stories, some made-up adventures about heroes and villains. Others, old memories we hadn't talked about in years. We laughed about the time Jacob tried to skateboard down the driveway and landed in a pile of leaves, or the time I accidentally dyed my hair pink with Kool-Aid. Each memory tugged another one loose, and soon it was like we were flipping through a photo album of our childhood. But one filled with laughter instead of pictures. At one point, the lights in the house flickered. Thunder rumbled outside, and raindrops began to patter against the windows. Instead of being nervous, we looked at each other and grinned. The storm outside only made our fort feel cozier. Like a safe shelter against the world. I suggested we tell spooky stories, even though neither of us was particularly brave. Jacob didn't hesitate. He launched into a story about a haunted treehouse at the edge of the woods, his voice low and dramatic, while I added eerie sound effects with my flashlight. Somewhere between laughter and shivers, I realized how much I had missed him, missed us. Life had gotten busy. I had started to think of Jacob as just the annoying little brother. But here, in this glowing fortress, I saw him differently. Not just as the kid who once followed me everywhere, but as someone who shared my childhood, my home, my memories. After a while, Jacob suggested we cook something together. The casserole Mom left us was waiting in the fridge, but that didn't sound fun enough. Instead, we raided the kitchen. We found pancake mix, chocolate chips, and whatever else looked interesting. Soon the kitchen was a mess of flour and batter, but our pancakes came out golden and sweet. We carried them back into the fort, stacking them on plates and eating with sticky fingers. Laughing about the chaos we had left behind as the storm outside grew louder, the fort became our world. Jacob opened up in a way I hadn't expected. He told me about his soccer games, how nervous he felt being the youngest on his team, how he wished he could be braver. I really listened and realized that while I had been busy thinking, he was just a kid. He had been carrying his own worries, his own hopes. I shared my own struggles with him too. How school sometimes felt overwhelming, how I didn't always fit in with my friends, how I was scared of the future. To my surprise, Jacob didn't laugh or brush it off. He nodded, thoughtful, and gave me advice in his own simple way. Hours passed. The storm eventually faded, but we stayed in the fort, the glow of the Christmas lights wrapping around us like a blanket. For the first time in years, it felt like the distance that had grown between us had melted away. When our parents returned, they stood in the doorway in disbelief at the fortress we had built. Mom laughed. Dad shook his head, but I saw the way they smiled, relieved and happy to see us together. That night didn't change the world, It didn't solve every problem or make everything perfect. But it reminded me of something important. Family doesn't always need big moments or grand gestures. Sometimes all it takes is a simple suggestion, a single "let's do this," to turn an ordinary night into a memory that lasts a lifetime. Even now, years later, I can still picture the fort glowing softly in the dark. The sound of rain against the windows, the warmth of pancakes on our plates, and my younger brother's laughter filling the air. And I'll always remember that sometimes the best adventures don't happen in faraway places. Sometimes they happen right at home, when you choose to make the most of the time you have together.